All right. Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for having me here. Very excited to be here at OpenSearch Con. Hope everybody has some brain space left. You haven't been filled completely with everything you've learned over the last few sessions, because they have been some fantastic sessions. Typical, conference talk for Search conference is going to be about a solution, like how we build up a solution, how we made something work. This is a little bit different. We're going to be building an argument in this talk, but it's an important one, especially for this community. So I'm really excited to be able to do this, and I hope you get something out of it. Okay, so that's clearly me, working hard. I've been doing the software thing for a while. I'm been in search for 15 years, and I'm a co-founder at a search consultancy called KMW. What I do personally, I manage search projects. I do search consulting, and I'm like most proud of building an exceptional team of search professionals. And one of the things that I also do, and it's kind of the genesis for this talk, is helping customers to contribute to open source projects. So if you don't know KMW, come check us out. We got a booth in the back. But we specialize in things like information retrieval, vector databases, search engines. We do the search thing. And we've been doing it, in conjunction with machine learning, like well before, LLMs and the chat GPTs, but we do that too. And if you want to break down what we do specifically, we do custom application development, search audits, where we basically come in and take a look at a cluster and try to like optimize it, make sure it's running well, search relevancy, and we do a lot of search performance tuning. So that's the KMW story. Let's do a little participation. Show of hands, who here is working with OpenSearch currently? Okay, just about everybody. And second question, who here works for a living? You go to a job and you get a paycheck and you use it to buy stuff. Okay, just about everybody. So what we have established is that the OpenSearch community is not a group of independently wealthy philanthropists who are just kind of hanging around, right? Like, these are people that have jobs that actually work. And why is that important? Because today's talk is about how to win organizational support for contributing to open source. That is a mouthful, I know. So I've done some alternate titles: how to get permission to work on open source contributions during work hours, or how to pitch management on why they should pay you to make open source contributions. We're going to build an argument, and that's going to be the purpose of today's talk. Why? Why are we doing this? Well, because it's important. Because, and Eli talked about this morning, right? There's 250,000 downloads or something like that, like this year, of OpenSearch. And so just think about how many people are using this platform. That's just this year, but for all time. And also this goes beyond just OpenSearch to like all open source projects. But there's a proportionally small group of contributors, right? So I think the statistics that were said this morning were about 1,000 contributors. That's a lot. That's a great community, but that's very small, right? Why? Well, one of the big barriers is often business manager approval, right? If you want to be working on open source during work hours, a lot of times somebody actually has to give you the okay to do that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about really today. Like, how do we convince that person to give you that approval to do the work? So then basically the last assumption, which I don't think anybody here is going to argue with, and obviously AWS really believes in this because they're putting on this whole conference, is that OpenSearch is going to be a better product if it has an active community, more contributors, more perspectives, and more innovation. So who is this talk targeted towards? People who are interested in OpenSearch, people who would like to contribute code and be contributors, but their day job isn't currently paying them. That may be you, that may not be you, but regardless, I hope you get something out of the talk today. Before we get into the argument, though, I think like a really big piece that I wanted to hit on is it's really important to support those people who aren't ever going to get, or aren't currently going to get, that financial support to make contributions. Who are these people? Some people are like just really into the technology, they're enthusiasts and they're going to be doing this in their own time. Some people, maybe it's their side hustle, they're doing something else totally. Maybe they're trying to change jobs or change careers and they're getting involved. And I will say, yesterday there was a phenomenal talk by, I think it's Iskander and the twins, folks from Kazakhstan, about university students getting involved in OpenSearch and basically spending their time to learn this technology and contribute. So that's another great group of people, university students that are currently unsupported contributors. So these people are important. If you know them, thank them. Buy them a drink, buy them an entire meal of food if you can, whatever you can do. But we always got to make sure that we support our unsupported contributors. So my agenda for today, we're going to go over a couple things. We're going to make the case for using open source. We're going to make the case for sponsoring contributions. We're going to make sure to set expectations on the process. We're going to have a plan for the contribution. We're going to talk about overcoming objections to sponsorship, and then we'll do a little bit of summary. Okay, so making the case for open source. Again, open source conference, right? Like, I think a lot of people know that there's a great value in open source, but we're going to build on these arguments as we go along. So I'm going to make a couple different cases or a couple different arguments for open source in general right now. Argument number one, open source is the sexiest software. Yes. Don't mean that. That's not what I'm talking about. There's some really strange images on the internet, by the way, when you start looking at that. What I mean is this, biologically sexy. So I don't know if you folks know this this animal. It's a tuatara. It has the distinction of having the highest molecular evolutionary rate anyone has ever measured. It looks like a lizard. It is not. It is actually closer in relations to a dinosaur. Or this guy, biologically sexy. This is the tardigrade. Folks know this one? This is the water bear, sometimes they call it. Has the distinction of being able to survive at close to absolute 0 and 300 degrees Fahrenheit. They've actually found these on spaceships they've sent into the void and brought them back, and these things are still alive. This is one of the hardiest organisms that we know about on our planet. So my point in these is that open source is sexy in the biological sense, right? Organisms that are likely to mate and reproduce, that's what I'm calling sexy. Organisms that are well suited for survival, sexy. The reason I'm talking about this, and really the idea came from this book, The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley, a couple of years back, but it really had an impact on me. And what he talks about in this book is this concept of, basically where did human progress come from? Like how come we have had this amazing, as a species, explosion of our race and being able to do all these amazing things and basically transform our planet. And one of the, and everybody's got arguments for this, right? Fire and, communication and all sorts of things. But one of his, I think the innovative idea that he brought in this book is that it's all about ideas having sex. And what he talks about is that, humans have specialization, things that they know, and then when they start exchanging, we've been trading forever, right? And living in communities. That process of specialization and exchange is what actually makes ideas pop up and makes ideas, communicated. And it's those ideas that, it's not good enough just to have a good idea. It actually has to be interacted with. It has to have a chance to evolve. And those ideas that evolve, that's what becomes human progress. It's what, gives us innovation and tools and sends us to space and all these other great things. So this concept that well-adapted ideas survive and remix and they interact with a larger population. So that's Matt's argument about human thoughts. Where I'm talking about today is software, right? It's like these ideas, but it's better for this argument, right? Because ideas can be amorphous. Software is explicit. It's persistent. You're actually interacting with it. You can see how things get changed, how they interact. So open source, when we're talking about software, is more likely to interact, right? Than say like commercial software. It's accessible. It has no geographic boundaries. It's more likely to be experimented with. It's more likely to be mixed with other software. We heard about that, at least, in today's keynote too. So the argument here for open source is that it's more likely to interact, adapt, evolve, and ultimately to survive. Okay, that's argument one. Argument two, open source is good business. So technology choice is a long-term investment. And what do I mean by that is that anybody who's adopting technology into the organization, there's a lot of cost involved, right? A couple of examples here: learning the technology, integrating it, operationalizing it, who's on call, pager duty, all these things. This takes a lot of time as an organization. You have to invest to set all this stuff up. And if you're going to go through that investment, then you want to make sure that it survives. You want to make sure that that's not for nothing and you don't have to go change out your system in another couple months. Open source is a lower barrier of entry, right? So obviously the cost, we're talking about OpenSearch, very nice, free to use. But it's also easy to get people to come in and help you with it. The community of support, if folks who's here is on OpenSearch Slack, I am, yeah, it's great. And you can get a lot of answers and there's like a really nice communication that goes on there. So a lot of, I've worked with software that doesn't have this, right? And you're scouring the internet trying to find some supporting documentations. That's a high barrier to entry if you want to get started with the technology. And we're going to talk about people today, right? The ease of hiring. So as evidenced by all the great folks that are here today and taking part of our conference, but we know that's not the whole community. There is a huge active community for OpenSearch and open source in general, right? And one of the things that's really attractive from a business perspective is that if you're using open source software like OpenSearch, you can find people who know this and they can basically be effective right away. And the other part I think that's important is that as an organization actually gets started with this, or not get started, but as they mature with a technology like OpenSearch, they gain a reputation. And so then it's easier to find really good quality people because they know that you're a serious place. And this is the pragmatic argument, when we're talking about, from a business perspective, open source is already here. So basically, if Alpha team across the hall is already using OpenSearch, like that's an easy sell, right? Like, yeah, we can do a 6-month evaluation of all these technologies, or we can just take the thing that's already here. So we talked about why open source makes sense for the organization. Let's talk about making the case for sponsoring contributions, taking that next step. So three main parts to this argument. It ensures your approach is supported, it makes good on your investment, and contributions are an investment in people. And I'm going to keep coming back to that one. So ensures your approach is supported. As a consultant, this is the one that we hit most often. And I assume, from a lot of the developers in the room that have been doing this, this is the very practical reason, for a software team. So, probably the best example of this is for those folks that have had to create their own private fork of, like, say, OpenSearch, right? Nobody wants to go down this path, but it happens. And then, for whatever reason, maybe, there's something that you need to do that you can't with the stack as it currently is. And then that's risky, right? Because if you keep that private fork and the stack evolves in different ways, then you're going to be potentially in some trouble, right? And you want to be like the tardigrade, like you want the thing that you built that you've been working so hard on, you want that to survive. And the upside, like the hope that everybody has when they make a contribution, is that it's not just them, right? The community is going to come in, they're going to get involved, they're going to support, they're going to help keep this thing alive. The flip side of this is that there can be a cost to not contributing, right? So say you did keep your private fork and now the next version comes out, that might break everything that you've got. And then what do you do, right? At that point, now you are forced to either, figure out a fix to what you were doing previously, or maybe you have to now start thinking about the migration off of the technology that you're using. And as we talk about the long-term investment, like that, nobody wants to do that. That's a terrible option. So actually, and the last piece about here is the unit tests. And unit tests are amazing because it actually guarantees the functionality the way you want it, right? So if you have these tests, whenever people are going to get ready to add new features, or we're going to, get out a point release, those tests have to pass so that you're basically guaranteed that your solution is going to be maintained. Second case, or second argument for sponsoring contributions, we want to make good on our investment. Okay, we talked about this. A technology choice is an investment of resources. Contributions can be seen as a way to improve that, right? So the thought experiment here is, I'm going to give Tesla as an example. So I don't drive a Tesla. But I am, climate change is a thing. I'm hoping that EVs do good in general. and I'd love to see Tesla do well. That's like a general feeling. Imagine that you own 1,000 shares of Tesla, and I didn't see the market today, but that's about $250,000, right? You're gonna feel differently about that. You're gonna feel, you're gonna be invested. You're gonna really, really want that stock to do well. And that's the kind of the difference. And what I think people really should be thinking about is like when we do a technology, when we adopt a technology and it's part of our stack, that is the same thing as owning those 1,000 shares. It really matters. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to be using this open source technology, then you really should be making it as good as it possibly can be. So the other side of this argument, that not all open source projects stay active. Everybody here know the Apache Software Foundation? Some really good software, that's maintained by that organization. But every year, they retire projects. That's just a fact. There are things that are super exciting today that become less so. I don't think that's a problem for OpenSearch anytime soon. I think this conference really solidifies that. But I think it's important to know that it takes a village, to keep this up, right? And just being here and participating, and we've heard this morning too about I think 20 different organizations that are actually maintainers now within the OpenSearch stack. Like that's great. But this idea, and 1,000 contributors, but as that gets bigger, it makes for an active, attractive project. That's what people are looking at when they're looking at solutions. Is this going to be maintained, right? We heard that argument before. What's the best way that you as an individual can make sure that this project is maintained? Help maintain it, right? Make contributions. And the last one, contributions are an investment in people. So what do I mean by that? If you're going to actually make a contribution, you really have to know that stack, or at least that part of it. So this is actually a way to enhance skills on the team. And contributions are not made by organizations, right? They're made by individuals. So as an organization, it allows people to enhance their professional reputation because now they're doing something that's bigger than just their product, their company. Now they're doing something that's benefiting this whole open source community. And managers love this argument. Let me tell you, they love this argument that not all compensation has to be monetary. If they think that they are giving you something of value and they don't have to open the wallet to do it, this is great news. But I think that when we're making this case, it's an important point to raise, is that you're actually, by allowing people to do contributions, you are giving them something of value. And that's important. Okay, setting expectations. If you come in and you're making your case to your boss or the manager in question, and you bring in your pictures of tardigrades and you've totally nailed it, but then you go and you do your contribution, and things don't go well or don't go as they thought that they would, that can be considered a failure even if the contribution gets made, right? So it's really important up front that we set some expectations so that we don't have unsatisfied people at the end of the process. What are the expectations that that we have found useful to make? One, it's important to talk about the fact that the contribution can change, right? There's no guarantee that the thing that you're doing the way you've done it is going to be accepted as it is. Maintainers might ask you to be working, there might be an existing issue that's open. They might want you to work with the people who are doing that. There might be something that's already in progress. So just because you're coming to the table with this thought or idea, there's no guarantee that it's going to be taken as is. And then, the last part on that too is that once it doesn't stop once it's in, right? That contribution needs to be maintained over time. So it's important that the people who are making these decisions have that expectation that it doesn't just stop when the PR is merged. This has to be supported for a variety of reasons in the future. Other piece here is that timelines and estimates can be difficult to predict. We have certainly had that experience, as an organization where we've tried to contribute some stuff back, and then it just took longer than anybody was really expecting. So I think it's just an important part to set that expectation up front that this is a collaborative process and that the timing can be a little bit fuzzy. Last part here too is that even if something does get accepted, doesn't mean that you get it immediately, right? And then maybe this is going to be in the next major release. So it's just something that's important to keep people abreast of. And then the other piece here is that, okay, you've made your argument, and you set the right expectations, and then they say, go for it. What do you do, right? So I think getting to yes on making the case for doing contributions is to have a plan of action around this as well. So what do we suggest on this one? A couple pieces: what's being done and why, what's going to happen, the major deliverables, and we'll use this plan to set the expectations we talked about a minute ago. One of the biggest pieces for that overview is why, what's the value? And this is kind of cliche, but I thought it'd be worth bringing up too. We want to emphasize painkillers over vitamins. What do I mean by that? Like, vitamins might help your bone density when you're 80. Cool. Painkillers take away your migraine today. And if your organization has migraines that this contribution solves, you want to highlight that very clearly. And it's not just about the organization-specific ones, right? If this contribution is not generic, it's going to have a harder time going through the process. So basically answering that question, how is this contribution generic? How can people that are not in our organization use this? That's an important piece to know. And if you have a savvy organization, they're going to want to know that too. So I think it's an important piece to bring up front. And basically by making it generic, and we've seen this a bunch of times, people are going to go and use this in ways that you've never even considered. So it's just a case for, make sure you understand how you're going to do it for multiple cases. All right. This, no shocking here, order of events and deliverables, what are we going to do? I did want to highlight, we're going to engage the community early, right? There were some conversations yesterday about the request for comments, the RFCs. Very important to get that ball rolling early in the process so that it can be combined with other work that's being done, or people can poke holes in it. Worst thing that can happen is you spend all this time writing code and wonderful tests and everything else, and then the community's like, we don't like it. So engage the community early. We're going to avoid that problem. Other things that happen: the development, the amazing unit tests, the award-winning documentation. Are we giving out awards for documentation today? I don't know, but we should, because it's important and we want that to happen. How we're going to support the feature. And the last piece, and I don't know we've really talked about this much as a conference today, is the promotion, right? This is great stuff for any organization or individuals. Contributions should be promoted, and that's going to help a company if that's done successfully. All right, now these angry two folks, this is actually kind of one of my favorites. This is the overcoming objections part. So if we're building a case for making an argument, we have to be ready for what they're going to say to us so that we have our responses ready to go. And we're going to build on what we talked about earlier for this. So these are objections that I have actually heard over the course of facilitating this process. 1, we're too busy. 2, we don't have the budget. 3, this is not our focus. And 4, which I think is slightly ridiculous, but I've heard it, we're a commercial software company. We're not an open source company. We're doing commercial software. Why are we going to contribute? So let's break them down. We're too busy. Rebuttal to this, going with our theme of the long-term investment, a contribution takes less time than switching technology products, right? You're not too busy to not have to take 6 months later on. Second rebuttal, on the people aspect. We're not too busy to send people to training, right? We make time for investing in people, and that's true. People take, I've worked in a lot of Scrum teams, and yes, like we've got our points, and we're just going to try to hit our deliverables for the end of the sprint. But people are conscious of that time, but people still go on vacation. We still make time for people to go out and go to a training class, or maybe even attend a conference. So why do we view making open source contributions different than those things? Right? It's still that investing in people. All right, argument: we don't have the budget. People love to talk about not having budget, right? Definitely heard this one. Rebuttal here: contributing is cheaper than maintaining the code ourselves, right? Over time, we talked about all the things that can go wrong if we're trying to maintain that private fork. Much cheaper to just contribute it. And then the people argument: we have budget for investing in our people, right? We do invest in them. We invest in them all the time. This should be part of that. This isn't our focus, AKA we are not a search company, right? Heard that one before. Why are we contributing to open source? We're not a search company. Well, if if we're not, and we're a commercial software company, and we want to, or commercial software, we're just a commercial company, right? We're trying to make money. We're trying to watch the bottom line. And the rebuttal here is, let's keep this open source project in good shape so we don't have to worry about it. So we don't have to spend money on it, right? And the people argument, and I think this is actually very valuable, especially for organizations that get really focused in on their dev process, is to, contributing to open source is a great way to expose engineering teams to different ways of doing it or different ideas. So, just kind of flip that on its head a little bit, for this isn't our focus, but yeah, like maybe we can gain things by expanding our focus to other communities. And the last, we're a commercial software company. I think historically there has been this like, like a philosophical argument of like all code should be open source. I think nature favors biodiversity, right? There's a strong, like, we all use commercial software. We're all going to continue to use commercial software. So those two things exist, in harmony. And I think that when we're making the case for open source software, we don't have to say that commercial software is bad. In fact, commercial software earns revenue and can pay people to contribute to open source. I think it makes a ton of sense. And the rebuttal here is that the price is right? We're going to save money by using open source. And then on the commercial software company too, free marketing content, right? Let's promote the great things that our people are doing. Marketing content is hard to produce. When you have an open source contribution, that's basically free content, and that's a good thing. So in summary, making the case for sponsoring contributions to open source software is about achieving alignment, right? Why should we do this? It's because it aligns with our organizational goals. It's good for employees. It's good for the tech stack. It's good for the business. And it's good for the community. So that's all I got. This is my contact information. Thanks for being here, and I'd happy to answer any questions.